Today on the Dennis Michael Lynch Show, the Clintons are set to testify in the entire Epstein drama. Plus, Congress is just allowing its members to get rich in this mysterious sort of way. We're going to take a look at that. And why is Trump handing out more visas? There's so much to discuss, and it's going to be all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. If you're on Facebook, I'm going to ask you, please, as I do every day when I start this entire beautiful thing called a podcast, I'm going to ask you to please hit the share button. If you share, you care. And if you're on YouTube, we are new to YouTube, just kind of getting going there. And we ask you please to share. In fact, what my son will do during the podcast, he will put a link in the Facebook chat, and that link will bring you to the actual program on YouTube. If you don't mind, if you have a YouTube account, if you could just subscribe so this way you get the notifications. They are far better at giving notifications than Facebook is. I've explained this to you a bunch of times. Facebook is really gearing up towards having the 3-minute and less video, where YouTube is like, okay, we'll take the long form. And so that's why our strategy is to go there. We have an interesting show for you today. It cuts a little bit differently than what my normal model is, to where I'm going to ground myself in some of the things that are taking shape and place as we're speaking. We have some of that for you. But I want to go into something that I guess I'm going to open up the show with something that bothers me. And I wonder if it doesn't bother you as well. And that's this whole concept of Black History Month. I don't get it. We have a Black History Month. We've even got a Pride Month, right, for gays, lesbians, and LGBTQ. But we don't have a White History Month. It's probably because you couldn't do a White History Month. You'd have to do a White History Season. And even then, I don't know if you would list all the accomplishments. We get buried. White people get buried because white people are apologetic. And it's a shame because all month long, truth of the matter is, we're just going to get jammed down our throat a bunch of African Americans who will play it as they were victim. You know, Black History Month now is for the Michael Browns and the George Floyds of the world. And we're supposed to sit back here and be like, yeah, okay, Black History Month. Yeah. No, I think it's an absolute disaster. If Black History Month was to really equal out to anything worthwhile, it would be, let's take a look at why the black communities can't get out of their own way instead of blaming the whites and instead of blaming the cops. And each day for 28 days, we should take a look at another person like George Floyd and really dive deep into what that person was all about. Maybe that sort of Black History Month would help our fellow citizens who are African American, but that's not what happens. That's not what happens. Instead, what we do is we hoist these people, and we being the media, hoist these people as heroic. So George Floyd somehow becomes an icon, a civil rights icon, sort of like Martin Luther King Jr., which is sort of disgusting in of itself, if you think about it. Then to make this even worse, what bothers me, aside from the fact that whites have no representation on the calendar, the people who fought and died for this country, the people who fought for this country and lived to tell their stories, those are the veterans. We have one day to celebrate veterans, and we have another day to memorialize those who died on Memorial Day. So think about that. You give your entire life, whether it is literally or somebody like my father who served in Vietnam and then for decades was riddled with alcohol and drugs and PTSD. I mean, when I was a kid, for some reason, I remember this like it was yesterday. I never even seen this movie, but there was a movie, maybe some of you who are older will remember it. There was a movie called Three Musketeers. And it wasn't what that title would make you think. It was a war movie. I've never watched it, never heard of it, nothing. The only reason why I know it is because it was one night, and night times with my father were always difficult because most of the time he was drinking to sort of soothe his own pains. But what he went through in Vietnam would always jump up and catch him. I mean, two stories that really stand out that I think you would find interesting is he tells a story of one night being in a foxhole, and they were taking incoming. And while he was laying in that foxhole, an enormous poisonous snake slithered across his stomach, and he could not even as much as move. He tried not even to breathe. If he tried to move to get the snake off him, he would have revealed his position and that of his fellow Marines. I mean, my goodness, when I'm in my backyard and I see a snake in the grass like 30 feet away, I panic. And it's only a little black racer snake. It's completely harmless, or they call them rat snakes because they eat the rats. I couldn't imagine having a big, huge 10-foot poisonous snake go across me. And it's like, who's going to get you, the snake or the Vietnamese who are trying to get you as they're hiding in the woods? So, I watched my father suffer through that. He would tell that story. He'd tell the other story about his best friend. His name was Joe Hunt. I actually went a few years back with my daughter, and we went to go visit the wall for Vietnam, and we saw his name on there. And it was touching because it actually didn't put a face to the story, but it put a real human being to the story that my father used to tell about how there was an incoming. And when there was an incoming, Joe Hunt saw this, and he jumped on my father, and the bomb went off. And by the time that my father woke up, half of Joe's body was missing. The other one was covering my father. So these things are the sort of things that Vietnam veterans had to go through, and it troubles them. And so I remember one night my father made the mistake of watching The Three Musketeers. And I say the mistake because when I was a young kid, you may recall cap guns. Remember, we used to have cap guns? You just load the little gun up with these little red pellets, and you would hit it, and it would make the sound of a gun. And we weren't allowed to have those in my house because the cap guns, or even if you were to drop something like a book on the floor and it made that big snap, my father would jump. And in many cases, he would hit the deck. He would drop down thinking he was back in the bush. So, I mean, I watched this sort of thing through my entire life. And to think that they just only have one day, veterans have one day, but we're going to give Black History Month an entire month, and we're going to give gays who, and I'm not talking about, your average gay. I mean, when we see these pride parades, they're usually filled with the most strange-looking people that you've ever seen in your life. We're going to give them a full month, and yet our veterans have memorialized people who lost, the greatest generation, the people who stormed the beach at Normandy. They're only going to get a day. And of course, white people don't get anything. The only thing we get is a tax bill to pay for it all. But maybe you don't know about Black History Month. I just want to tell you how this all started. Black History Month originated from an historian named Carter Woodson, who sought to address the widespread neglect of African-American contributions in mainstream education and historical narratives. In 1915, it was inspired by a national celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Emancipation in Chicago. Well, that wound up going over time. It evolved, and by the 1940s, it became a month. And President Gerald Ford was the first president to nationally recognize it that year, urging Americans to honor Black contributions across all fields. So I did a little study here, and I asked which Blacks in America are most often recognized for making a contribution to America. And it's amazing how little this list supports the fact that we need a month. First of all, one of the greatest African Americans, and I got to meet him on several occasions, and he is indeed a great American, and again, a great African American, is Ben Carson. He's not listed on here. Ben Carson made great advancements in neurosurgery, splitting, Siamese twins, and obviously he was a great part of the Trump administration 1.0. And many would say that he would have been, I know I'm one of them, a far greater vice president than that of Mike Pence. And yet, the amazing part is that a school filled predominantly with black children, I believe it is in Michigan, recently removed the name of a school that was named after Ben Carson. And I say recently, it was in the last 8 years. They removed the name from the school because he became part of the Trump administration. So the one guy who really, really, really has something to offer and has every right to be mentioned in Black History Month never is, and he gets his name stripped. But here are the names, the top 10 names that usually come up with this. Martin Luther King Jr., you know who he is. Rosa Parks, she sparked the Montgomery bus boycott. Frederick Douglass, he was an abolitionist. And then you have Harriet Tubman, who was a conductor on the Underground Railroad. Malcolm X, of course, he's just a hero, isn't he? Then you have Barack Obama, and I don't even know if he is a truly American. But Muhammad Ali, he's famous for being a boxer. Can you imagine this? You've got Maya Angelou, who was a poet, never even heard of her. George Washington Carver, who was a scientist and inventor in agriculture. And then, of course, can't have a list of blacks without mentioning Oprah Winfrey. I mean, this is the list of 10 people that gets mentioned most often when it comes to Black History Month. Well, the good news is we've got a great number 11. Because, see, if you look at the board here, that this guy Pascal put up a tweet, says happy Black History Month, and it shows all the crazy maniac videos you'll find all over the place of the very angry people of the black community who always blame whites and always blame cops for their own mishaps. Well, listen, there is an 11th person that these people can aspire to be, and she is known as being one of the squad members. We're talking about Ayanna Pressley, because Ayanna, somehow, some way, has figured out not only how to get elected into Congress, but use it as a way to get filthy rich. We have a report here from Fox News. Ryan's going to play it right now. Here is a report on how much money Miss Pressley has and why she should be number 11 on this very astute list.
Ilhan Omar isn't the only millionaire squad member. Now, our team dug into open secrets and financial disclosure reports. What we found is that when Ayanna Pressley was elected to Congress back in 2018, she had a negative net worth. You fast forward to today, she's worth $1.3 million with assets worth up to $8 million. Now, that's a massive increase in just 6 years, especially for someone on a $174,000 congressional salary. It's impressive, really, but how did she do it? Well, part of its property in 2024, Pressley reported owning a Martha's Vineyard rental worth up to $5 million, as well as multiple Boston rentals worth up to $1 million each. Now, for context, back in 2019, she only reported owning one property in Boston. We're also learning days before Pressley was sworn into Congress, her husband quit his $92,000 annual Boston City Hall job to start his own consulting firm called Conan Harris and Associates. And as we read more of the Congresswoman's financial disclosure reports, we learn that her husband also saw his income jump while he was in Washington. His client list consists of some government organizations, including one with deep ties to the Obama Foundation. But as he started his firm and seeked new clients, he faced ethics concerns because of Pressley's job in Congress. Quote, as Harris's days dwindled in the city's Office of Public Safety, he used his city-issued email account to pitch Walsh's chief of staff on staying on as a consultant. City officials say they did not solicit nor accept the offer, and state ethics laws bar municipal employees from knowingly using official resources for personal gain. Now, we asked Pressley for comment, and we even invited her on. She did not answer.
There you go. Now, just so this way you know, you may come back to me and say, oh, come on, DML. Maybe she's got some hidden talents that would create such a situation for her to become wealthy. Let's figure that out. Let's go back and forth here. What do we know? When did she grow? Where did she grow up?
She was raised in Chicago with a single mother who was a tenants' rights organizer. Mm-hmm. And she had a father who struggled with drug addiction and was incarcerated.
Okay, so automatically she fits the profile. right? Secondly, where did she wind up going to college?
She went to Boston University, although she did not complete her degree. However, after college, she entered her political career as a staffer for Representative Joe Kennedy, and then later became the political director for then Senator John Kerry.
So in other words, she really has no business or world experience other than the world of politics.
Yes. I guess often cited here in the report is that she is the first woman of color elected to Congress in Massachusetts and one of the founding members of the Squad, which also includes AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib.
Right. And then, Fox News was bringing up her husband. He's a real winner too, right?
Yes, Conan Harris, who is her husband, actually served a 10-year prison sentence for drug trafficking, as well as earlier this year, he slapped a reporter's phone out of his hand as the reporter was attempting to ask questions to Ayanna Pressley about alleged child care fraud in Minnesota.
So there you go. You explained to me how a person of that nature, that stature, who to me, it's almost just as a ridiculous story as Ilhan Omar. How do these people get so damn wealthy? When did Congress become a job that pays $175,000, full benefits, retirement package, and oh, by the way, a guarantee for insider trading, a guarantee for your spouse to get contracts that raise eyebrows? When did this happen? I mean, of course, my opinion is that this woman and her husband wouldn't be able to find their way out of a paper bag, let alone into near $10 million status. But that is what it is that Congress now has. Congress now has an entire lineup of people who have figured out, in my opinion, how to game the system. And you and I just sit here and pay for it all. We really do. And you know what? We discussed here when we were putting the show together. Should we bring up this topic because it's not going to put Trump in a good light? I said, you bet your ass we're going to put an asterisk on this with an exclamation point every single time somebody talks about how wonderful things are in this White House. I don't know how they get away with it, but somehow, some way, when the Trump administration does things great, the MAGA crowd will absolutely blurt it out, and I'll be right there with them, right? This is great, this is great, this is great. But then when something is eyebrow-raising and you say, what the hell is going on here? Everybody buries it. Well, not this place. I would imagine you come to me because you want the truth, not because you want to be showered with the stuff that you want to hear. There are other podcasts that play at 10 o'clock a.m. every single day where they will fancy your bones if that's what you're looking for. But on the DML News app, I was astonished when I saw the news that came across. Will you tell me what I'm talking about here with new visas?
Yeah, this is directly from Breitbart here. The Trump administration has quietly decided to allow employers to import 65,000 extra H-2B visa migrants for jobs that would otherwise pay decent wages to ordinary Americans. The visa giveaway is part of the President Trump zigzagging between the two sides of his coalition, the voters he needs on Election Day and the business donors who provide the funds for political campaigns.
There you go. We talk on a daily basis about how it is that President Trump can lock in a victory for the midterms. And this morning, my morning video, I haven't had a chance yet to look to see if it's gone viral. I certainly hope it does. On Fox News, I get alerts for certain topics. And so something came across me this morning before I made my morning video, which focuses in on dreamers. Dreamers. There's a guy, you've probably heard of him before. His name is Hugh Hewitt. He's been doing the radio thing for pretty much as long as I've been alive, if not longer. And Fox News puts his op-ed towards the top and says how it is that Democrats have given Trump an opportunity to fix immigration. This is the title that Hugh Hewitt puts in. But I'll read you the one little part here that, I mean, it was a horribly written op-ed. I mean, it took like 9 or 10 paragraphs just to start to get to the core of what it is he was talking about. But this is what Hugh Hewitt writes. He, meaning Trump should flip the messaging script and demand of the Congress that this appropriations bill regularize all dreamers, illegal immigrants, he uses immigrants instead of aliens, illegal immigrants brought to the country as minors, as well as other discrete categories of illegal immigrants, such as those who can present a track record of work and tax returns for 10 years with no arrests, and all illegal immigrants over the age of 50 who do not have an arrest on their records. Immunity from deportation by categories based on common sense makes the operational workload of DHS smaller while reducing the political cost of unpopular deportations of low-skilled but dedicated labor that hardly anyone objects to when they are on the receiving end of those services provided by those migrants. All the dreamers, which is an 80-20 common sense issue, and other categories of illegal immigrants who should be regularized should receive a 5-year blue card, a status renewable every 5 years provided the holder does not violate the criminal law. The compromise President Trump puts forward should also articulate that there is no path to citizenship for anyone who entered the country illegally, and thus the right to vote will never be theirs. See, this is the thing. No Democrat will ever vote for that. And neither will any Republican. There is not a single, I will tell you this right now, and I am not kidding. If Trump were to give an amnesty or forgiveness, he calls it regularized, if he were to give that to dreamers, the so-called dreamer kids, and all illegals over the age of 50, who, by the way, are they going to get Social Security? They're going to tap into Social Security? And by aliens, illegal aliens who have been here for 10 years and can demonstrate they don't have a criminal record? First of all, Hugh, you stupid idiot, they're all criminals. They all came here illegally. Day one, they were a criminal. And to suggest that the president, who ran on mass deportations and to end all the freaking free teat-sucking programs that these people strip from American citizens, to suggest that says to me that Hugh Hewitt is part of the deep state. And I can tell you, if Trump were to give something like that, I'm not voting. I'm not showing up because I ain't going to give this guy another ounce of my energy. I won't. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you give anything of that nature, you don't deserve to be the president of the United States, and you're fake MAGA. And we're just going to have to reset. That's the way it works. And if you don't like it, and if you don't think I'm being nice, well then, like I said, there's a lot of other shows at 10 a.m. And these people will sell their souls. They'll sell their mother for audience and clicks. Not this guy. There's only one way to solve this. First of all, we have to designate, using verbiage, who is who and who is not. Let me tell you what a dreamer is. A dreamer is not an illegal alien who crossed our borders holding the hand of their parent. My heart doesn't ache because once they got over that border, the American citizen gave those kids a free education, gave them a free pass. And now those kids are competing against our kids unfairly. Nobody asked for any of this. And those parents, oh, they didn't commit a crime? Yes, they did. You want us to give them regularization that they're going to wind up being here in the United States? No, because let me tell you what happens, Hugh, you dumbass. Today you give them regularization, and then when Trump loses because he makes stupid mistakes like the one you're telling him to, the Democrats win, and then they take it a step further because they'll change the regularization to citizenship. Because ultimately, these illegal aliens are permitted to stay here for one reason and one reason only, The reason why you see all these protests taking place is because the Democrat Party and the people who fund them totally recognize that two things are apparent. Number one, they get congressional representation based on the census, which counts illegal aliens. So the representation that is in Congress on a state basis is done by the population. So the more illegals that they can flood this country in and now keep them in, because at least Trump stopped the border from being a sieve, but we haven't gotten rid of these people in mass numbers. So the Democrats have an incredible advantage over the Republicans. That's number one. So Hugh Hewitt, in his stupid-ass moronic plan, creates it to where we'll never get anything done because the Congress is going to continuously be made up of representatives from blue states that dominate what winds up happening. Number two is that we know that immigrants, illegal or otherwise, always vote for the blue team in large numbers. Although they can't vote. Well, they're going to have kids, Hugh, and those kids are going to be able to vote. And so the Republicans will never win another election ever. So President Trump, you listen to this moron or anybody else in your White House who's dishing that stuff to you, you are going to lose at least half of your voter base. Just not going to show up. And I can tell you, I'm going to be one of them. I'm not going to deny it. You screw me, you screw my kids, because my kids are the dreamers. Your kids are the dreamers. Your grandkids are the dreamers. We got kids who go through a system, and that system teaches them that if they work hard and do good in their studies and they take their SATs and they do all those other different crappy tests that they make them do, and they go to college, they come out of college, they could be anything. My ass. They can't be anything. You talk to the kids today in the United States of America, you talk to the teens and the early 20 kids who graduate college, they can't find jobs. And the college graduates can't find jobs in their area of study. Some of those reasons is because their area of study was things like, stupid blue ribbon. I don't even know how to describe it. Just stupid stuff like lesbian studies. There's no jobs for that. But then other ones who actually went to school for something that you would say would be reasonable, they're either getting replaced by illegal aliens, cheap immigrant labor, or AI. They can't start families. They can't build homes because these are the kids. We don't get a White History Month. They don't get a White Kid Month. They don't get any of that. They don't get special nothing. And let me tell you something. The DEI practices that were supposed to be eliminated, they're still in play. And they're still in play here in Florida. Where's Ron DeSantis? Because I'm pissed. My daughter wound up applying to like 8 different schools. Her grades are off the charts. Her resume reads like she's going to be the next president of the United States, the first female president. And you know what? She got into every single school except for University of Florida. And every single kid in our town didn't get into the University of Florida. Why? Because they're taking immigrant kids. Because they're taking people who don't deserve to be in here. We're fed up with it. We're tired of it. And I don't want to see another tweet. I don't give a rat's ass about anybody's tweet. I don't want to have an op-ed on Fox News from some freaking guy who should have retired 30 years ago, who can't find his ass with both hands. Americans are tired of it. We're not going to hear anymore. Black History Month. I ain't celebrating anything. This is Black History Month. My ass. Unless you want to give a White History Month to make it even, then I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about racism. Everybody's so tired of having the race card stuffed down their throat. We don't want to hear it anymore. It's over. The racists are the people who come up with Black History Month. That's racism. You're going to favor one person based on their skin versus their accomplishments. And then one of the most impressive people of all, Ben Carson, ain't even going to go on the list. So it's a scam. I don't want to hear about it. It's absolutely absurd. And now we got schools, teachers, these blue-haired, liberal, freaky, can't figure out what they are sexually teachers who dominate the school systems across this country are now having kids go out and protest against ICE. And you wonder why it is that our country can't find its ass with both hands? Because these teachers, these radical teachers who dominate the classroom by more than 90% in every single category, whether it's social studies, math, science, whatever, you've got these freaks who couldn't make it out in the real world and they had nothing else left to do and said, I'll be a teacher, and teaching these kids not arithmetic. They're not teaching them how to write their name or address an envelope or how it is to balance a checkbook. They're not teaching them how it is to go out and get themselves a job and how to be a productive part of society. They're teaching them how to be protesters and future rioters. We've got something here. What do we got? A video? Is it B-roll or is it actual video? 30 seconds. It's B-roll or is it? No. All right. So here it is. We've got schools. In fact, Dennis, set up the video. What's going on right now with these schools calling for protests?
So there's 3 different school districts in central Texas, Pflugerville, Austin, and Manor school districts, and about 13 different schools out of those districts, some of them being middle schools, but most of them high schools, all demonstrated walkouts to basically show their anti-ICE sentiment, as well as pro-legal and illegal immigration sentiment.
Oh, my ass. Play the video. You see that? The one kid there holding the Mexican flag. You see the majority of the makeup here, the demographics. I'd love to take each one of those kids individually, sit them down, and say, okay, we're going to do a spelling bee. Spell scissors. Spell psychology. Spell Pfizer. I'm telling you, you would have the craziest spellings of all time. All right, let's do a little arithmetic. What is 5 plus 5 minus 6? It would be a deer in headlight. So we're teaching these kids how to be rebellious, how to be negative about America and promoting illegal activity. And you wonder why each and every year our country continues to decline. It's insane. Now, these ICE agents that are across the country, not only do they have to put balaclavas and scarves over their face, so this way they're not identified, so this way they're not going to get their asses pummeled by either rowdy, crazy rioters that were taught in these school systems like this, trying to protect themselves from the cartel. Now, in Minnesota, what's going on now with body cams?
So Secretary Kristi Noem revealed that body cams will be implemented for DHS, ICE, as well as Border Patrol agents operating in Minneapolis, but they do have plans to expand the body camera operations nationwide.
And let me tell you what will happen with these body cams, okay? The body cams will prove that the Miss Goods are bad people and that, Nurse Preddy is a violent, deranged person who needs a nurse versus being a nurse. And so what will happen is these cameras will pick this stuff up. And then when they go up on the internet, the footage, the mainstream media will completely ignore it. These teachers will never give a lesson about it. Instead, what they'll do is they'll cherry pick the videos and they'll cut them and omit them, so this way it looks like the ICE agents are the Gestapo. And you know what winds up happening? Seriously? They just continue to let this happen time and again. Who's they? The White House. They let it happen. Fox News lets it happen. Newsmax lets it happen. None of these places can be trusted. None of them. The fact of the matter is that these kids should be planted in a seat learning how it is that they can write their name, do math, and understand how to compete in the world. You go to China, you go to Japan, you look at what those kids are being taught, it certainly isn't how to go out in the streets and protest against police officers of all frickin' people. These kids should be out there protesting about members of Congress like Ayala Presley and Ilhan Omar, who are suddenly becoming wealthy instead of representing the people the right way. And you know what it is? This stuff is all bought and paid for, because this is the only way that these people can survive. It's all bought and paid for by people like George Soros. What do we know about funding from George Soros?
So a recent report shows that several groups that have financial ties to George Soros's Open Society Foundations network are suing to prevent President Trump from halting legal immigration from 75 countries that produce waves of welfare-dependent migrants. The lead group in this case is the Catholic Legal Immigration Network, which has financial ties to the Soros network, such as raking in more than $500,000 in funding annually between 2016 to 2021.
You know, I think I said it either yesterday or last week. If I were to fund terrorism, I would be a co-conspirator. If I were to fund the bank robbers, I would be a co-conspirator. Yet these people who fund these riots never have a price to pay. Never, ever, ever. I'll tell you, this country's got a lot of great things to offer, but it is also very, 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 very broken. Very, very broken. We've let the rules just slip by. I'm going to play for you a 2.5-minute video that is going to blow your mind. If you've ever seen videos of Mexico, the cartels basically take over the streets. The police can't do much. The politicians don't even dare. And what they do is they basically see who's coming in and who's coming out. They own the streets. You would never, ever believe that you would see something like that, especially during the middle of the day, in any U.S. state. But in Minnesota, Mayor Frey and Governor Walz are allowing rogue leftist citizens to set up camp, if you will, in the middle of intersections, and they look at people's license plates and they tell them to pull over, and they see whether or not these people are ICE. I mean, this is so unbelievable. So for those people who are only listening to today's show, you won't get a sense for this really. But I mean, for people watching, you got to ask yourself, how is this happening? Play.
Yeah, he's just our Somalian Uber driver, man.
Hey, how's it going?
You said his license plates are ICE?
Doing good, yeah. I was just saying, it looks like in our system, your plates came up as an ICE plate. That doesn't seem like it's the case, but I just wanted to come through and see what was up and talk to you, see how you were doing. Okay, I figured, yeah.
I mean, he's clearly Somalian.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, glad to hear it. What's your name? Ali? Ali, nice.
How long have you guys been out here today? Are we good though?
Yeah. We're good.
I do want to ask, what's the system you guys are using out here? I mean, because it's obvious that was wrong, right? I mean, the guy was just a Somali Uber driver,
totally.
not
Well,
ICE.
the thing is, ICE, they're renting a lot of cars. But yeah, we'll take this off the list. Yeah. Who y'all with?
We're honestly just from California. Just independent photojournalists. Names,
Okay, do y'all have like a Twitter or something?
Jorge Ventura.
Jorge Ventura?
Yeah, Jorge Ventura.
All right, cool. Thank you.
How long has this been set up, man? Like, the images of this are going viral online. That's what we came. I don't know if you know if they're going viral. But.
Yeah, no, I heard that. People are people saying that, and a lot of the neighbors support what we're doing. So happy to be here.
Has local law enforcement said anything?
Not that we know of, no. But look, I gotta get back to this. I'm not trying to do no interview. All right.
I don't know about you, but if one of these guys were to try to stop my car, they're going home with maybe a few missing teeth. I mean, why people accept this and deal with this, I have no idea. But then again, who in their right mind would vote for Mayor Frey or for Governor Tim Walz? So Minnesota clearly has its head tucked up where the sun doesn't shine. But, when you look at where things are in the United States, it's very easy to always blame the Democrats, but I really don't think it's just a one-way street. I really believe that there are so many people on the right who pretend they're like the Manchurian Candidate. They are so full of it. They really are closet Democrats or closet communists and socialists, and they just figured out how to penetrate the Republican Party and fool people into thinking that they really are conservatives. And there is going to be no better example of this than what's about to take place with the Clintons. It was announced yesterday that Bill and Hillary are finally going to testify. They tried to evade this for as long as they possibly could, and finally they had to cave, thankfully, because the Department of Justice wouldn't ease up. What do we know about what is actually happening here?
Yes, so Bill and Hillary both agreed to testify before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. They were subpoenaed twice, tried pushing it off through lawyers, and Congress was going to have a vote this Wednesday, tomorrow, to hold them both in contempt of Congress. And I guess to avoid it, they have finally agreed to testify. However, it is unclear when the new date for their congressional testimonies will be held.
Okay. So it's coming. We just don't know when it is. But I will give you a prediction that I know is going to come out right. And if you've been with me for a long time, you know most of my predictions come out right because they're not based on just, closing my eyes and spinning a wheel in my head and then picking black or red. My predictions are based off a history of watching human behavior, knowing politics like the back of my hand, and because everybody in D.C. basically plays the same game and it's oh so predictable. What you'll watch is the Clintons, and this is if this is publicly done, and you'll watch a couple of people, I don't know, whoever's going to be up on that dais, on the Republican side are going to ask really tough, hard-hitting, anti-Clinton comments. And the Clintons are going to either have sudden amnesia, they're going to use things like "I don't recall," and they're never going to answer They're never going to answer the question. They're going to dance around it with long, sort of filibustering commentary. Nothing will come out of this. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, they will not have a price to pay. The only thing that they'll have is maybe a little bit of embarrassment. But because the new world that we live in, where news of 2 minutes ago is old news, this will blow over. And you and I will just sit there and shake our heads and say, well, you know what? We're not politicians. This is why we don't get rich from stock trades. This is why it is that we can't do things that are horrible and get away with it. And at the end of the day, you can't blame the Democrats. They're going to protect their own. You got to blame the Republicans. You have to. And I got a prime example here. There's a gentleman named Vince Foster. If you don't remember who Vince Foster is, here's the reminder.
Vincent Foster was a prominent Arkansas lawyer who worked at the Rose Law Firm in Little Rock, Arkansas, where he became a very close associate and friend of Hillary Rodham Clinton. He then went on to work for Bill Clinton's 1992 presidential campaign, where he was then appointed deputy White House counsel under President Clinton, a role that placed him at the very center of early administration controversies.
Yeah, Whitewater was one of them. What happened to Vince Foster is he wound up dying. This was a very, very, very successful lawyer who people who knew him said there's no way he killed himself. But they came up with this narrative that he was embarrassed with press headlines that weren't going in the right direction and that he decided to take a gun and to take his own life. Now, there's a book about this, probably the most famous book of all of them. It's called The Strange Death of Vincent Foster. Who wrote that book? My old boss, the guy who fired me and pulled me off air during live television. His name is Chris Ruddy. Now, at the time, back in 2016, I was the #1 show on Newsmax, if you recall. And I was pretty much the first, if you want to call it at that time, big name or somebody who owned a show. I was the first person to get behind Trump. I was behind Trump immediately from the day that he walked down the escalator. In fact, I was actually exploring things of my own. And then when he walked down that escalator, any question I had whether I really was ready to do this sort of thing, because my kids were so young and I had a couple other things that, I didn't have enough money to my name. And then when I saw Trump come down the escalator and give his speech and focus heavily on immigration, I said, okay, we don't need me in this race. He's going to do it. He's going to win. And I was behind him from day one. In fact, if you go back, I gave a speech in Michigan in 2014 before I even thought about maybe doing something myself. And I was asked by somebody during the Q&A, who do you think would be the best person to run for president? And I said, no doubt, Donald J. Trump. And people laughed. Those same people probably are waving MAGA signs somewhere in their home. But I wound up dedicating my show for fighting for Trump. And I did it on a daily basis. And people like Dick Morris, who used to be for Ted Cruz, and other people who were for Marco Rubio, who are now all Trump, 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 Trump. They used to fight with me on my show. And I wanted to have people who wrote books about the Clintons to come on my show. And I was always turned down. I was never allowed to put them on my show. I could put on anybody else, but not that. And I was the #1 show. You usually don't deny your #1 host of his guests. And finally, after like the third or fourth time, I said, what is going on here? And then I learned a little something about Chris Ruddy. So I'm going to take you back. This is the early 2000s. I believe this is the early 2000s or even the late 1990s. Chris Ruddy, when he was writing his book, The Strange Death of Vincent Foster, also was a columnist, if I'm not mistaken, I think for the New York Post. Here is Chris Ruddy explaining what he thinks of the Vince Foster death. Play.
We're here to talk about the Clinton scandals, although I wouldn't really classify them all as scandals, and I think there's been some mistake in doing that. The Paula Jones thing is a scandal. Jennifer Flowers is a scandal. What disturbs me most about this administration is that they have engaged in a pattern of abuse of power. And this abuse of power is very threatening, I believe, to all our civil liberties. This is one of the reasons why, on the Foster case, I've pursued this, not because it's an interesting unsolved mystery, but because time and again, we know that there's evidence of wrongdoing, that there were officials who knew that there were evidence of wrongdoing, and nothing has been done. We know that 4 of the paramedics did not believe it was a suicide. 2 were very forceful in saying that it was a murder. 1 classified the death in his official report as such. We know another one says very categorically, and there's some evidence to support this, that there was a bullet hole or trauma to Foster's neck. We know that there was a medical examiner who was used by the White House, Dr. Cyril Wecht, who told the Senate Banking Committee, you need to do a second autopsy here. Overwhelming problems. I've never seen a case like this before. He said for a VIP where there's so much missing evidence on critical issues.
Okay. Oh, DML, that's just a one-off video, right? Oh, no. We've got a second one to back that one up on a completely different speech because Chris Ruddy was dedicating his life to show that the Clintons were not a very good couple. Play the next one.
The president's best friend under very mysterious circumstances, and in fact, they want to keep the FBI out of the inquiry. And what I think here really happens is that the White House takes control of a death investigation and engages in one of the most serious abuse of powers in this country's history. And I think one that would make Watergate look like child's play, because at the end of the day, Watergate was a burglary, a third-rate burglary, and here you have a dead body. Even the New York Times, in a recent editorial, admitted that the White House engaged in cover-ups in the office matter, although they're still accepting the suicide verdict. Well, as one book reviewer put it, if they would rifle his files in his office, what would stop the White House from rifling his body? And of course, the question is, if they would cover up matters in the office, why would they not cover up matters in the death itself? The White House was controlling the investigations to the point they were even dictating the timing of the autopsy procedure, as they detail in the book. The morning after the death, the autopsy procedure had been scheduled for the following day, 2 days after the death, where there would be police officers from the crime scene who could assist the pathologist doing the autopsy. Sometime between 7 and 9 a.m. the day after the death, and I think it's a clear indication the White House...
Okay. Now, this is going back 25 years ago, right? On or about. The Clintons have been protected time and time again for 20, 30 years. Why? Is it because people are afraid of being the next Vince Foster? Many people would argue yes. But here you have a very brave Chris Ruddy writing articles about them, writing a whole book about them, and getting up and giving speeches about them. All right, somebody's breaking the mold. Somebody finally from the conservative side of the aisle is going to say, we're really going to go get them. Not just doing something for CPAC speeches or doing something for cable news hits. No, this is a guy who says, I'm going for it. Well, you explain to me how you go from writing a book that people are saying, yeah, this doesn't sound right, giving speeches. How do you go from that to then donating $1 million to the Clinton Foundation? Yes, Chris Ruddy and Newsmax are $1 million donor to the Clinton Foundation. How do you go on your own network 20-something years later or 20 years later and say the following? Play.
I know there's a lot of smoke. We've been talking about all the smoke. Is there really a fire? And I'm in a very unusual position because I am known as being a conservative journalist. I'm very proud of that fact. Unembarrassed by that fact. But yet I admire President Clinton for the work he has done in his post-presidency, and I admire the work of his foundation, of which I have been a donor through the years. And I have never seen, in all my dealings with that foundation, any whiff of politics, of political opportunism, of anyone trying to use the foundation money for their own purposes. And so when I hear these allegations, I really feel that I really should speak out about it and give what my take on it is.
Now, let me be very clear on something. This segment here is not about Chris Ruddy. He's irrelevant, and as far as I'm concerned, he is just a human being not even worth listening to. But how do you go from being somebody that was dead set on proving that the facts all lined up in a certain way that kills the narrative to now donating $1 million and going out of your way, writing articles about Hillary Clinton wouldn't be such a bad president, because that one was up there. The Clinton Foundation is a great foundation. And that whole hit there was about a book that came out by a Breitbart writer, Switzer. I don't remember his total name, but he wrote something about the Clinton Foundation outlining all these different nefarious things that looked like the ugly underbelly of the Clinton Foundation was that of a scam. How do you flip the script like that? Are you afraid that you're going to be the next Vince Foster? So I show this to you because I am telling you that this investigation, if you want to call it, of the Clintons coming into Congress and testifying is nothing more than a dog and pony show. And just to reiterate, right now, I have no suicidal tendencies. Okay? And you will not see me flip the script on how it is that I feel about things. So, yeah, you're not going to get anything. You're not going to get anything. It's a sad, sad day. Now, to try to drive this home, we always have a little crazy left segment. And as you know, Don Lemon was arrested the other day for his participation in the church invasion that took place in Minnesota. I don't know about you, but if you're concerned about your freedom, are you going on Jimmy Kimmel? I know I'm not, but that doesn't stop Don Lemon, because ultimately he probably feels uber confident that nothing's going to happen to him, because nothing ever happens to the people on TV or the people in Congress other than they get more rich and more famous. Here is Don Lemon explaining what happened to him when the FBI arrested him. Play.
CNN, so it's a whole new argument. And I got back to the hotel. I walked in I had my swag bag from the thing, and I was walking up to the room, and I pressed the elevator button, and all of a sudden I feel myself being jostled, and people trying to grab me and put me in handcuffs, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "We came to arrest you." And I said, well, "Who are you?" And then finally they identified themselves, and I said, "If you are who you are, then where's the warrant?" And they didn't have a warrant, so they had to wait for someone from outside, an FBI guy, to come in to show me a warrant on a cell phone. And by that time, I was trying to, figure out what was going on to get my bearings, and they dropped all my stuff. My glasses had fallen on the floor. I'm like, I can't read that. So they had to pick my glasses up, and I read it, and still, what does that mean? And then there was a bunch of guys, and they took me outside. FBI guys were out there. I mean, it had to be maybe a dozen people, which is a waste, Jimmy, of resources, because I had told them weeks before, and maybe once or twice, that we would, I think my attorney tried to contact them once, maybe twice, that I could just go in, and it would have to be the folks who were just working there that day, and they wouldn't have to have all these people following me around.
It's more than just a waste of resources. So they grab you and they take you where?
Well, you're right about more than just a waste of resources. They want that. They want to embarrass you. They want to intimidate you. They want to instill fear, and so that's why they did it that way. They took me down to a holding place in at the federal courthouse.
And they give you mugshots, strip search, all of that stuff?
No strip search, but mugshot, fingerprints, the whole 9 yards, twice.
Did they put you in a cell?
I was in a holding room.
You're in a holding room?
Yes.
And how long are you in that holding room?
From about midnight, 12:30 to 1 or so the next day.
Who did you make your one phone call to?
Here's the interesting thing. I didn't have a one phone call. I never had a one phone call.
Wait a minute. I watch a lot of TV.
I know. I asked them, do I get my one phone call, Jimmy? They said, no, you don't. You get to talk to your attorney whenever the court says that you can. And so that wasn't until the next day. But I tell you how I got it out. I had my Apple Watch on in my phone. And I called my husband. I said, hey, Siri, call Tim. And he was asleep. Went to his voicemail. And then I said, hey, Siri, call Abby Lowell, who's my attorney, and went to his voicemail. He was traveling back from someplace. And finally, I got into the front of an FBI agent's truck, and they had the handcuffs on me. And my bracelet, I had on a bracelet that my husband bought me for our wedding, which was this diamond bracelet, and it kept getting caught. And it was kind of hurting, and they said they'd take it off. And I said, do you mind taking that up to my husband in room blah, 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 blah. And one of the FBI agents said, sure, and took it up, and that's how my husband found out. Otherwise, no one would have known where I was.
Wow. All right.
Well, I guess the good news is that Don Lemon got to say his husband 3 times. And Don, there's only a couple more months until you have your month, your Pride Month, and I'm sure you will not be in a jail cell to do it, because that's the way it goes. So there you go. There's the program for today. I come away saying if there's going to be a Black History Month, there should be a White History Month. Quite honestly, there should be no Black or White History Months. There should be Veterans or Memorial Day Month, and because that's really what this country is all about, people who are willing to fight for it, not fight against it. And so ultimately, I hope I'm wrong about the Clintons. I hope that the Republican Party finds its spine, and I hope that President Trump says, you know what, I changed my mind. I'm not going to give out another 65,000 visas to compete against Americans. But I think I may be praying that somebody wakes up tomorrow morning and tells me that the Tooth Fairy is real and she's married to Santa Claus. Until the next time, may God bless you, our troops, these United States. May you hit the share button. And don't forget, if you're on Facebook, to try to go over and like us, follow us on YouTube, as that will be our future new home permanently. We'll talk to you soon.
Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and TeamDML. Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and TeamDML. Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking